This time on episode 511 of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., we discuss the 2024 Disney Plus show X-Men 97, Season 1, Episode 10, Tolerance is Extinction, Part 3.
I'm Anthony Bachman from All Things Good and Nerdy, a geeky podcast part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other fantastic geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Raised on X-Men, empowered by the Avengers, strengthened by the Defenders, webbed by Spider-Man, adopted by the Fantastic Four, and forged by S.H.I.E.L.D. Stand by for your Marvel debriefing.
And now it's time for your Marvel debriefing. I'm Agent Lauren.
I'm Agent Michelle.
I'm Agent Chris.
And I'm producer of the show, Director SP.
Welcome to Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. The show is recorded on Sunday, May 19th, 2024, live from the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. studios and broadcast sometime to be determined wide. Come join our live chat as we record. And Michelle, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about Tolerance is Extinction Part 3. The X-Men's dream is put to the test as mutant-human relations reach a tipping point.
First thoughts, Michelle.
Still better than the live-action films.
Chris?
Season 2 starts when now? Because I want it now.
Lauren?
Not quite where I thought it was going to end up, but I am loving it.
Mine? Best season 1 ever? We'll talk about that later. But what we're going to start talking about in this episode is the fact of the pacing of the episode itself. You had mega moment after mega moment. I counted a total of 9, and it was just rolling one after the other after the other. Some were action, some were dramatic, some were kind of transitional, but mega moments on themselves. It was just captivating. What'd you guys think of that?
It felt like more than a half hour's worth of stuff. And you're right, it was just one thing after another, and I need to watch it like 3 more times to fully process everything, I feel like.
In those 9 mega moments, one of them, or perhaps multiple of them, were Xavier and Magneto. Michelle, daddy versus daddy.
Yes, but this time we have Daddy Xavier trying to help Daddy Eric. And in the torment of Magneto's mind, Xavier is questionably shaping Magneto's mind, telling him certain things, not telling him certain things, just in order to get Magneto back. And also to save his own skin, because technically, if he can't save Magneto, then Professor X's brain goes all mushy. And I know he said he would make that great sacrifice, but come on, he just came back. We all know that there's an underlying, I hope my brain doesn't go mushy in this process. But he does end up bringing, Daddy Magneto back and getting Daddy Magneto to fix things and to bring Asteroid M back up. And yeah, the daddies have an interesting relationship now.
It's really interesting in there how Charles has gone through this entire time. People need to have a chance to prove themselves are good. People need to be able to have a chance to live their life. And he's going in and forcing Eric to do what he wants in order to come out of his little inception area.
This is why nobody likes you, Charles.
Yeah, I had that too. It seemed like gaslighting to me. I caught the bigger picture was that Magneto had gone so far over the edge that they were trying to bring him back. But to me, it didn't really play that way. Maybe it was just how I was looking at it, and that Xavier ended up basically gaslighting Eric. But in the end, everybody was good. They were actually together at the very end. when they were in Egypt, 3000 BC, Xavier and Magneto with a few of the other X-Men. We'll talk about that later. But it seemed okay in the end, and I hope it just keeps that way and that Magneto doesn't keep on going back to, well, Eric, you did this to me, which he begged him not to along the way, and Xavier did it anyway. So yeah, this is a main pivot point of the whole episode, because if it doesn't happen, then Earth is toast.
So this is my big, well, that's not where I was expecting this to go moment. It was following certain aspects of some of the mid to later 90s comics and kind of starting to go in the direction of some stuff that I've brought up previously. But then they jumped out of each other's minds, and we'll see how that ends up in season 2. But yeah, I'm very interested in where all of that mind business is heading.
Perhaps a 10th mega moment that I didn't really encapsulate in my 9 that I was talking about were all the cameos, true cameos. Morph did a couple himself, but true cameos. Michelle, what are some of the cameos that we saw?
We had Captain America, Daredevil, Doctor Strange. We have Wakanda, Cloak and Dagger, Omega Red, Psylocke. We had Peter Parker and MJ. We had, I think we saw Reed from the Fantastic Four.
I think that was Morph.
Think that was Morph doing that?
I think that because it was on the asteroid.
Oh, okay. There was just so many cameos to keep count of the actual characters that it was, because Bastion, when the Earth gets turned back on again, Bastion's creations end up getting turned on and going everywhere, and they're just willing to attack anybody.
We did get a little bit of explanation. They were actually cyborgs, his creations. They were cyborgs in here, because I wasn't sure what to call them before. I don't think anybody was, but yeah, it was kind of a combination of the Sentinel tech and then his ability to manipulate human DNA or whatever. And it just, I guess that's where it was at. But yeah, Chris, cameos, I think you have a special one.
The Peter and MJ cameo for me was the most exciting, because what does this mean for other reboots here in the cartoon universe that's happening? We can finally get a Madam Web story, because that's never happened on screen. We can maybe figure out what happened after Fantastic Four and Iron Man stuff, but especially getting a Spider-Man continuation, please, somebody make this happen.
We'll see where Marvel decides to go from here. I think this is an excellent example of being able to do some animation and bringing it into the future, but at the same time, it is a special case where it was this beloved series, and I don't really think any of the other series carried its fandom forward as much as this did. So I don't know if we'll get continuations or new ones or whatever, but if they, meaning Marvel Studios and Disney Plus, can create some content that is not live action, that is pandering more towards the adolescent crowd, younger tween crowd, I think maybe we have a shot.
If anything did carry that fandom, though, it was the Spider-Man one.
Yeah. Well, we also had Morph in a very interesting scene telling Logan that he loved him, but Logan wanted Jean, so he morphed into Jean. So was this Morph telling Logan he loved him, or was this Morph just being a friend and being Jean for Logan?
So, confirmed by Beau DeMayo, it is in fact Morph kind of confessing their crush on Wolverine, but also being, trying to just be there for Wolverine, knowing, hey, this is the person that he loves most. And yeah, it was confirmed, and it's been hinted to before. There's a scene in episode 3 specifically. I'm looking at an article on Kotaku right now. In this episode, Morph and the other X-Men are subject to visions of their worst fears. Morph's hallucination starts with them seeing Wolverine in the shower, taking in the view and making a joke about helping him with the hard-to-reach spaces, and then the dream becomes a nightmare. So, I'm interested. I don't really particularly think this is going to be more than a one-sided crush, but it was sweet.
And if nothing else, there is friend love. So if for some reason you don't want to think about Morph having a crush on Logan and going that way, you tell your friends you love them too. That's a thing that happens. But also, yeah, I'm totally on board with this, the way that it's been confirmed.
One of the mega moments that I counted was when they go back to Asteroid M and they are having a big fight. Rogue gets into it right away with Bastion when he shows up, and she just launches herself at him, punches him in the face, and says his name was Gambit, remember? Michelle, this was an excellent callback.
Yes, this is going back to Remember It. My name is Gambit, remember it. One of the best episodes, not just for this season, but just an excellent episode of television. I hope the rumor is true that Disney Plus submitted Remember It as the episode for the Emmys, because I know this stuck the ending, and while there were all these mega moments, it was paced really well. Remember It stands on its own as a piece of great television. So I do hope that rumor is true.
And then also, Lauren, talking about that fight and all the fights, action scenes.
The action scenes were so good. It was just beautifully animated. I think the way that they all kind of flowed into each other was wonderful. We'll get to it in a bit, I think, but in particular towards the end, when you start getting like Phoenix and Morph has a little revenge moment, and the way that they tied into each other and then also kind of brought in, it kept dipping back into Xavier and Magneto in their like mind palace. I loved it. This episode just, like I said, it felt like more than a half hour's worth of stuff in a half hour, but also, I don't know, the pacing was just so good for me.
Michelle, talking about the action scenes again, we got insight into what has been in the opening credits this entire time.
I have wondered why they've been showing Jean as the Phoenix all season long, and then to protect her son, all of a sudden that last spark of the Phoenix comes in and just decimates Sinister, just takes out all the weird DNA that's been making him ageless and basically invulnerable. And then he makes him like this shriveled version of himself. He turns to Morph and it's like, what do I look like? And he's just devastated.
Oh, that felt so good to watch.
Yeah, it was just a rising from everything, right? You had the I'm here to take away Sinister. You had the I'm coming back because it's in my memories. It was one of the 9 epic moments that I thought of. Now, Chris, is violence always the answer?
It's not always the answer, but really sometimes it is. You have Charles and Eric, and yeah, Charles has to get a little bit violent to be able to get things going there. Also, you have the fact that they didn't just take out Bastion. They've had multiple opportunities to just take him out, It really reminds me of really early season Power Rangers where, oh yeah, let's kind of hold back a little bit so they turn into a giant monster. And they've just had so many opportunities to take Bastion just completely out of the picture, and they never did it. And even when they had him on the ropes, they just sit there and, oh yeah, let's let him have a chance to redeem himself. It's like, no, he's already proven he's not going to do that.
I got a question for you guys. Was Bastion the villain we hoped for during this season? I mean, we didn't really know who the villain was. We always thought it was Sinister that was the big bad going into it. But was Bastion the villain that we hoped we would get?
I was not expecting Bastion, but for the second half of the season, I think he worked really well. I've mentioned before, I absolutely love his voice actor. Yeah, I've never been the hugest Bastion fan, but I am a fan of some of the comics that feature him. I thought they did some really interesting stuff with him.
You know who the voice actor reminded me of? And I know it's completely different people, but you go over to The Bad Batch and the Doctor in The Bad Batch. They had very similar characteristics. They were not the same by any means exactly. But when I first heard Bastion's voice, I swear it was the Doctor over on Bad Batch. And I looked into it. It's two different people, but it just reminded me of that. And then that made the villainous of it even greater to me. That's, the Doctor, the big bad villain over there in Bad Batch. But yeah, I mean, he killed Genosha in 4,621 seconds. I didn't go back to remember it and time it, but I'll take them for their word at it. That's pretty impressive.
I was hoping for Sinister because that's not the biggest of bad guys. So it still gives more further seasons time to grow, and it would have tied back to that original run. So, I mean, going super strictly by the question, Bastion was not the villain I was hoping for, but I'm very happy with what we got.
In the final scene with Cable and Sinister and Bastion was asking Cable how many times he tried to save Genosha or save his mom, and Cable said 200 times. Now, Strange went through 14,605 outcomes over there in Endgame, so not exactly the same level, but it's still impressive.
Also, the way that I took that with Strange going through those was kind of like the equivalent of Strange leafing through a book. This was 200 full attempts.
Yeah, and time travel can take its toll, not only physically, but also mentally. He saw his mom die 200 times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember how many times that Groundhog Day went through it. I saw some articles. It was in the tens of thousands, I want to say. Yeah. There was no aging involved.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite fan fiction tropes is the whole time loop thing where it's like, okay, how long have I been stuck in this? Oh, it's been years. That's fun.
Yeah, we're kind of robbed of our time loop episode here because that would have been kind of a cool one, but it ended terribly. So, a time loop episode has to have a good ending, and Cable didn't really have a good ending there because his mom still died and Genosha was still attacked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so Michelle, though, at the end, though, you have Scott and the entire X-Men team ready to take out Bastion. You had Hank riding the Sentinel, doing the Trojan horse thing, but Scott makes a decision.
Scott decides to, do what his dad didn't do and say goodbye. And I love the moment where Jean was able to take off the visor and do what she did before, which was actually discussed in an early episode, and that's use her powers in order to make his eyes visible. And that moment where he said, "These are my eyes, now they're yours, and they're a family." That's one of the things, they're an entire family because they have a dream shared. I remember that moment, what makes a family. It's more than just blood. Because even Jean is there and she loves Cable in her way. I mean, she and Madeline have those memories that are shared. So it was a beautiful moment.
I got teary-eyed.
What else got you teary-eyed? Maybe the music?
Okay, so the episode started with the birds turn, turn, turn as kind of a little hint of, okay, in this flashback, this is the time period that we're in. And it's, the flashback that they're having, it's in Magneto's mind, and it's back when he and Charles first met. And we're talking about, like, basically when they came out to each other. Again, all of the queer metaphors. But it also kind of serves as a good theme for the episode. If you're not familiar with the song, first of all, go listen to it. It's one of my favorites. And it's all about, like, everything has its season, everything changes, and I thought it was a very good choice for a season finale episode where everything is changing, including literally the time period that we're going to see. But then throughout the rest of the episode, just the background music was beautiful. During the fights, there was this choral rendition of the theme song that was amazing. It was beautiful. It just added to the scene so well. I'm a sucker for choral renditions, and it was beautiful. The whole thing was beautiful.
Just everything about the music was hitting perfectly to me in every single way. And, a lot of times you'll have an iconic theme song like this, and it just seems like it gets shoehorned in places because they want to use it again. But just everything about how they use this one is, I don't really think there's a better word than perfect.
So at the very end, this is a mid-credit scene, basically. We get something, don't we, Lauren?
Okay, so this is, I guess, our equivalent of shawarma for this episode, for the show. But after we get, the X-Men being thrown way into the past and way into the future, and if you know the comics, you kind of know what's going on and who's who. But then we see in the present time, in the ruins of Genosha, we see Apocalypse picking up the remains of Gambit's card that he threw when he died, that he died with. And again, if you know anything about the comics, you know it's coming and you know it's going to be bad, and I can't wait for it to hurt so good.
Yeah, I was balancing my mind what Michelle had wanted and what I saw on the screen. So we'll see how they unveil it. It's been renewed for a season 2, but I don't know who the showrunner has been appointed as. So we'll see where whoever it is takes it next year. One thing that I noted that wasn't fixed by anything, at least not what I saw, and maybe if it has, please correct me, but Logan is still physically broken. The adamantium is still ripped out and he's still recovering from that. So he doesn't have any adamantium in his system anymore. And he's still, like, one of his legs was still missing and stuff. So he's in a bad shape. It's still recovering. I don't know how he actually comes out of this. I don't think he comes out whole. I think he's scarred out of this, but we'll see.
So in the comics, this was one of the things that blew my mind when my cousin was telling, baby me about it. Like, oh yeah, they ripped out his adamantium and it living through it completely used up his healing power. And when he popped his claws and you find out that their bone, whenever they would come back in, it would still be bleeding. And that was such a huge moment to young me. I really hope we see that recovery process, both physically and mentally, next season. I'm so excited, you guys. I'm so excited.
And you're excited about the voice acting that we got in this episode.
I am. So I'm only listing people who have not been in the episodes before because we had several repeat voices, including our Xavier Ross Marquand. I always keep forgetting to look it up. But he also voices Apocalypse. We had Josh Keaton show up again as Captain America. But in the future, the woman who talks to the X-Men there, Mother Ascani, is played by Gates McFadden, who you might remember as Dr. Beverly Crusher from Star Trek The Next Generation. And then in the distant past, whenever we see Magneto and everyone rescues a guy there's this little village that's being attacked, and there's this one guy who's trying to hold everyone off, and he takes down his thing. We see the Apocalypse, like, markings on his face, and he says his name is Ensaba Noor, which we should all know what that is by now. That actor was, and I am very sorry if I get this wrong, I did look this up, Adetokunbo McCormick as Ensaba Noor, who I best know also from Castlevania, as is Theo James Bastion, as Isaac, who is an incredibly interesting character who shows up in the second season of that show. And amusingly enough, both Isaac and I'm blanking on Theo James's character's name, but they were sort of bros in that show, at least in the second season, before they go their separate ways. So it was a nice little reunion for me.
And talking about Isaac, we did have Moon Knight, I believe, as a cameo along the way. In the, I think he was in some sort of holding cell and was let out earlier on in the episode. And Gates McFadden, if you want to see her as a badass, the series finale for Picard, so season 3 Picard, last episode, is her being an incredible badass. So I do have a question for everybody to end this whole thing. I went away from this and I was just floored as to the season that was put together and everything. Now, granted, it is a continuation. It is 27 years in between the continuation. We could have the debate on whether or not this is really a season 1 or not. I will go ahead and say, yes, it is. If we're going to count like Battlestar Galactica reboot, probably should count this. But anyway, I was looking into best season 1s out there. And I have a list, but I'm just wondering, we'll start with everybody else. Does anybody have an idea in their mind, could be on my list or whatever, that they think is one of the best season 1s out there? Lauren, do you have anything in mind?
I have 2 that aren't on your list, because I do agree with Battlestar Galactica. That's one of my top ones. HBO's Rome, which sadly only lasted 2 seasons, but it was just firing on all cylinders from the very beginning. And the other one is, it was also an HBO show. Well, it was a Max, and now it's currently just moved to Netflix. But Warrior, which is based on a script treatment that was written by Bruce Lee and is produced by his daughter. And season 1 grabbed me hard, and the rest of it I love. Please watch it on Netflix. Maybe they'll renew it for a season 4. It's already survived cancellation like twice. We can do it one more time.
Michelle, do you have any that come to mind?
Orphan Black.
That's a pretty good one. I'm only halfway through, but yeah, I can see where you're headed there. Yeah. Anything else, either on the list or off?
I agree with Arrow. I'm crossing the streams. We used to talk about that. But season 1 was excellent. And of course, I think we know how much of a fangirl I am of The Expanse. So.
Yeah, The Expanse, for me, was a slow burn. I had to go to episode 4, which was CQB, before I fully bought in on it. Chris, do you have anything on or off the list?
Freaks and Geeks was amazing. Pushing Daisies was amazing. I mean, I'll even say that first season of Heroes was amazing. And I mean, I'm fully with you. This far in between them, this is a season 1.
Okay. So some of the others that are on my list that we didn't talk about, Game of Thrones season 1, that was kind of epic and generational. Chuck is kind of also an early geek pandering show. Lost, I never saw Lost, but from everything that I've heard, Lost season 1 was epic and really captivated a nation there. This is more of a miniseries, but technically kind of a season 1, especially since there were 2 other related miniseries, Band of Brothers, and the 2 related series are Masters of the Air and the Pacific. Justified, Westworld, The Walking Dead. Again, this is just season 1, whether the series turned out good or not. Stranger Things, Glee, The Newsroom, Defiance, Mandalorian, Eureka. I'm going to roll the dice here, and I'm going to say Stargate SG-1.
Yeah. I wanted to say Spartacus because the season ends so strong, but it's one of those shows where it takes like 4 episodes to get really good because it's trying to break away from Stars's, okay, just give us 300. And by episode 4, it found its own thing, but those first 3 episodes are rough, much as I love that show.
Yeah, I think that's okay, because The Expanse was the exact same thing. Took to episode 4 before it really started running. Yeah, I'm okay with that. There is a series on here that I debated and decided not to put on there. And you guys can debate me and say, no, it needs to be in consideration, but I'm going to say no, is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Season 2 is where it picked up, or the end of season 1.
Turn.
Agree there.
Season 1, turn.
Turn again.
Yeah, there you go. But the reason why I didn't throw it on the list is turn, I believe was episode 17 of season 1. So you had 16 episodes of like a 22 episode season or whatever that were, it actually was hemorrhaging listenership or readership or watchers, viewership. That's the term. It was hemorrhaging audience, and it just did not pick up until the end. Now at turn, everybody's like, whoa, this is amazing. But it was also not just isolated to the show. It was the MCU as a whole. And so it was riding those coattails. So that's why it's not on the list. I don't know. Chris, do you have any yays or nays on that?
I'm with you on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think especially at those really, really early episodes, it was Monster of the Week fun, but not anything groundbreaking.
All right. So we're going to roll into our final thoughts right here. And I'm going to start with Michelle, because I think she's going to have a little bit longer one.
The timey-wimey stuff better not bring Gambit back. I miss him, but his death had meaning.
I agree. Again, we'll go back to that post-credit scene. Ugh. Lauren?
I am so excited for season 2. Give me it now.
Chris?
How are you going to balance all these different time periods? Not even like how do the characters do it, but just in the storytelling aspect, how are they going to have these 3 or 4 or 5 or however many different time periods it ends up being balanced out so that we don't feel like we're getting 5-minute vignettes of everybody every week?
If I recall the comics that kind of dealt with similar situations, some of the books were entirely in one of the time periods, and some of the issues had combined, try to bring everybody together, and I don't know how that's going to work. So again, season 2 showrunner has their work cut out for him. My final thought is going to echo our dear Hank. Oh dear. Next episode, these 3 are going to continue with the X-Men Evolution Season 2 watch through. Episode 1, Growing Pains. I will be back for the Deadpool and Wolverine movie in July, but until then, we'll see how the Evolution coverage goes. So Lauren, if anybody has any thoughts that they want to get back to us about our podcast, X-Men 97, or maybe X-Men Evolution, how would they get in touch with us?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. You can find us at our website, legendsofshield.com. You can also get a hold of us at our voicemail, 844-THE-BUS-1. That's 844-843-2871. Leave us a message there. We'd be glad to hear from you. You can also join our Discord server at gunnageek.com/Discord. And as always, remember that Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a proud member of the gunnageek.com network.
All right, until when I return, I'm the director, SP.
Until next time, I'm Agent Lauren.
I am Agent Michelle.
And I'm Agent Chris.
See everybody next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I forgot to mention Samurai. It's on Hulu. I recommend it. Watch it in the Japanese.
I'm looking forward to everybody's responses on Best Season 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we didn't talk about all of them.
There's so many shows, it's impossible.
Thank you for listening. The intro music heard on this podcast is Great Marvels of the World by Lynn Publishing, found on pond5.com. The outro music heard on this podcast is Cinematic Trailer by Ed Records, found on audiojungle.net. Other transitional music on this podcast is found on incompetech.com, audiojungle.net, and pond5.com. For more information about this podcast, please visit legendsofshield.com. Excelsior!
So, soccer emergency. So, the end of the Premier League is this morning. And yesterday I was talking to my son-in-law, asking if he wanted to come over and see it on multiple screens, because I've done that before for football. And not to be confused with Premier League football, NFL football. And he's talking back and forth, but he never made concrete plans. And then this morning he's like, we coming over your house? Ah! Because I had done nothing about taking auxiliary televisions and setting them up, stuff like that. So, and it starts at 11 our time, I guess. So, my apologies for that. It was not my intention. I saw Niagara Falls for the first time 2 days ago.
Cool.
Yeah, never been up there before. I finished Lower Decks.
I still need to catch up. I'm like 2 seasons behind.
Last couple of episodes were amazing. The whole season was pretty tight when it comes down to it. But yeah, they did a really good job. I'm disappointed that it was canceled, but I could see how people were like, I don't want to watch anime, Star Trek animation. And unfortunately, both Lower Decks and what was the one with Prodigy? Prodigy were really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to watch Prodigy.
So then it went on to start Discovery, the last season of Discovery. I haven't gotten too far into it, but
Need to catch up with that too.
after that, I don't know what else is on Paramount Plus. I guess maybe Strange New Worlds when it comes out, whenever that's going to be.
Yeah. But my mom watches a lot of the CBS programming. So my rule is if it's being watched, I'm keeping it. So I got Max again.
What are you watching on Max?
I haven't had time to, there's some movies that I wanted to watch, and then I wanted to get caught up on Doom Patrol, but I forgot so much. And then there's Titans, because I think Titans has another final season. I think
need to
it's a
watch
final
those.
season. Yeah. Also, Max has HGTV, and sometimes when I need something mellow, there's a reason why HGTV is like, it didn't matter if I was in Minnesota or if it's here, it's always on a doctor's office, especially like a psychiatrist's office, because it is comfortable and you know how it's going to end.
Ugliest
Like,
Houses
you
in
know,
America is back. I need to catch up on that.
Yeah?
It's way, even Scott watches that one with me.
Which one?
Ugliest Houses in America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with Retta as the host. I love it. It's so good.
Well, cool. I know there's been some controversy around HDTV with fraud and stuff like that, and not HDTV itself, but some of the people that they've given shows to.
Yeah.
It's always, do I really want to go forward with this or not? And at the end of the day, yeah, you're just watching something. And are you okay with knowing that some of it is staged, like we're looking at houses and stuff like that? Are you okay with that?
Yeah. It's entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Again,
I love it when international is my favorite when it comes to the house hunters, because especially when you get the Americans who go to an island. And one of my favorite episodes, they went to one of the South Caribbean islands, and I'm sorry, I can't remember which one. And they thought they could get by the beach, a 2-bedroom and everything for like $900 a month. And because it doesn't look fancy, this island doesn't look fancy. And so the real estate agent could not like she get this look, and she's just like, no. And the shock on them. And I'm sitting there going, it's an island. They're not making any more land. Mm-hmm. So of course the, properties are going to be limited. They ended up having to be up in the mountains, not anywhere near the beach or anything like that, because that's the reality of the situation. And also when it comes to international, I'm not going to be able to go to Vietnam. And you see how the people live, even though it's staged, you still get to learn that in Germany, they could take their kitchen with them. I don't know how that started. How did that started? I mean, did someone in Gunther was like, I love my kitchen so much that I must, uninstall the entire thing and put it in this new house that I built? Like, because one of the things was like, we want a kitchen. And I'm sitting there at home going, why do you need to say you need a kitchen in an apartment? And then I learned that in Germany, they could take it with them. And I thought that was the most fascinating thing. So, and like, there's no roads hardly between cities in Greenland. You got to take an airplane or the ferry. Like, that's the stuff you learn when you watch it. Yes, it's staged. Yes, they've already picked out the thing and people get paid to empty out their houses and stuff like that. But in international, you learn just how things operate in some places different.
Yeah, it's like pro wrestling. Just because you know that things are predetermined doesn't make the journey any less fun. My favorite one was years and years ago. It was House Hunters in Hawaii. And it was this couple that I don't remember. I think the house that they got is the one that I don't remember. But there was one that was basically in the middle. It was a shack in the middle of a lava field. And another one that there were just lizards all inside the house. And they were like, no, it's a good thing. They eat the bugs. And I was like, that's my house. That's the one I would pick. Give me the lizard house.
Oh my gosh. There's one on there called Renovating Aloha. So they go and they renovate houses in Hawaii, and they end up, they're like $1 million. And a lot of them were like, yeah, because they're multi-generational. Like they want to get the big family to buy the house that's multi-generational. And it's like, that's the only way. It's really the only way to afford a house, even no matter where you are, is when you get like 12 people together in order to, afford anything. Because these houses end up going for $800,000, $1 million. And it's like, who can buy these homes? What do they do for a living?
I know 2 people who have moved to Hawaii, and both of them are incredibly successful voice actors and directors. Steve Bloom and Mary Elizabeth McGlynn ended up moving during the pandemic.
Well, I know that they have either 99-year mortgages, just like Japan, or 99-year leases, depending on who actually owns the land, because some of the land is owned by the natives of Hawaii. Like all of Honolulu Beach, or the Waikiki Beach in Honolulu, it's actually owned by a private school. It's the richest private school in the United States. And all of those mega hotels are on 99-year leases there. So I know that the mortgages or the leases, depending on which way you go, are far, far expanded from the 30.
Yeah, there's like a certain percentage of the land that has to be owned by Native Hawaiians. Our tour guide, when we went there in 2015, was Samoan and was telling us, like, yeah, I can't qualify one of these, but my kids can because my wife is Native. And, but the thing is, there's such a long waiting list, and, you know, all of the stuff that's available keeps getting bought up by rental companies. And I saw that they're trying to pass a thing to ban those, like the companies that buy specifically to do like Airbnb, which please do.
Yeah, that would be good. I know they had laws on the books for how many percentages of their total land could be owned by foreigners, either Australians or Japanese, or they even consider in some of those laws continental United States Americans being part of that.
Technically, I mean, we are not Kingdom of Hawaii, so yeah.
Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. is copyright 2013 through 2024.